In this section, an explanatory guide of the performance evaluation system of the Rainforest Alliance Standard for Sustainable Agriculture will be presented, based on the guidelines established in the standard and the certification rules. These guidelines represent the basis of the design and functionality of the checklist tool. As an introduction, it is important to remember that the standard is structured in 4 impact areas or principles, plus a 5th area for the scope of cattle. These principles are: Principle 1, Effective Planning and Management System. Principle 2, Biodiversity Conservation. Principle 3, Natural Resource Conservation. Principle 4, Improved Livelihoods and Human Well-Being. Principle 5, Sustainable Cattle Production. Each of these impact areas is made up of a combination of 3 types of criteria: zero tolerance criteria, critical criteria, and continuous improvement criteria. There are 5 zero tolerance critical criteria, which are Criterion 2.1, non-destruction of areas of high conservation value since November 2005. Criterion 4.1, no forced labor. Criterion 4.2, workers are not mistreated and there is no sexual harassment. Criterion 4.3, non-discrimination. Criterion 4.6, no worst forms of child labor. Failure to comply with any of these critical criteria of zero tolerance will result in denial or immediate cancellation of the certificate without the option of a verification audit. Then critical criteria cover the environmental, social, and labor topics of higher priority and higher risk. Operations must comply with all applicable critical criteria at all times as a condition for granting or maintaining the certificate. Criteria for continuous improvement define a sequential progression of sustainability performance and evaluate the farm according to its level of implementation of good sustainable practices in 3 levels, each more demanding than the previous. These are Level C, Level B, and Level A. Regardless of the type of criterion that is being audited, these will always be evaluated as: in compliance, when the audited operation complies with the provisions of the criterion. Non-compliance, when the audited operation does not comply or only partially complies with the provisions of the criterion. Or not applicable, when the criterion element is not within the scope of the audit. Based on the certification rules, in order to approve a certification or surveillance audit, the audited operation must comply with all applicable critical criteria, the compliance requirements for the continuous improvement criteria corresponding to the year in the certification system, according to the following table. This means that all organizations audited for year 0 shall comply with 50% of level C. For example, for group scope, all member farms and the group administrators shall comply with this requirement. In this section, the performance evaluation system for individual farms will be explained and the instructions for the correct use of the checklist tool will be shown. An important element of the performance evaluation system is the applicability. For the specific case of individual farms, the scope of the farm audit covers the entire geographical area within the boundaries of the farm and all natural, human, and economic resources and infrastructure, as well as relevant administrative and management information. For this example, we are going to consider a tea state applying with the following characteristics: having natural ecosystems, no facilities, and applies fertilizers only. This will be applied to a certification audit, year 0, and we will consider criteria 323 through 328. In this case, criterion 323 is only applicable for groups. Therefore, the tool will automatically indicate as NA. 324 is applicable for an individual farm where we will indicate 1 for compliance. Criterion 327 and 328 is not applicable in this case as the element of pesticides is not used. Therefore, we will indicate NA. Once the entire checklist tool has been completed with the corresponding information, the checklist will automatically calculate the compliance percentage of the critical criteria and level C according to the following formulas. For the percent compliance of all critical criteria, it will divide the conformities among the total applicable criteria. Do not consider NA, and multiply by 100. In the same way, to determine compliance with level C, perform the same calculation, but with the compliance data and total criteria applicable for level C. A positive certification decision will be made when the audited farm meets all the critical criteria and the level requirements established for its year in the system. For this case of year 0, 50% compliance with level C is required. In this section, the performance evaluation system for groups will be explained and the instructions for the correct use of the checklist tool will be shown. In this model, the facilities of the group administrator as well as each of the member farms selected in the sample are evaluated. Specifically within the scope of the audit for the group administrator includes the infrastructure, personnel, and other areas of human activity directly related to the management of the certificate. And in case it has, the group administrator will be evaluated criteria related to natural ecosystems, processing areas, handling of agrochemicals, or any other element that is limited to the impact areas. To complete the checklist tool of member farms, each of the audited member farms will be evaluated with all the criteria of the standard within their scope, and a not applicable compliance or non-compliance will be assigned in the corresponding manner. Findings and evidence information will be completed for all critical criteria and non-compliance of a continuous improvement, with a summary that reflects the reality of member farms. Once the evaluation of the entire sample of member farms has been completed and the tool has been filled in correspondingly, the tool will do the following calculations. For each of the member farms, it will calculate the percentage of compliance with the critical criteria in each of the levels, according to the following formula. The following table shows how the compliance results for year 0 of 3 farms would be calculated. It will identify recurring nonconformities in the event that 20% or more of the sample farms present a nonconformity under the same criteria. As we can see in the example for criterion 2.6, of a total of 6 farm sample, 3 present a nonconformity, representing 50% of the sample. So in the recurrent nonconformities column, identified with yellow color and in parentheses, it shows the amount of nonconformities. For criterion 2.7 of a total of 5 farm sample, it is not considered member farm 6 as it is marked as NA. 2 farms present a nonconformity representing 40% of the total sample, so that the same is identified recurrent nonconformities and the number of nonconformities is indicated. To complete the checklist for group administrator, all the criteria of the standard will be evaluated only within the scope of group administrator, and assigned a not applicable, compliance, or non-compliance will be assigned correspondingly. This means that for the Group Administrator tab, compliance will be filled out, as well as the findings and evidence only with information of the Group Administrator as facility and without the need to refer to the compliance of member farms. The compliance results are calculated at the critical criteria level, level C, level B, and level A in the same way as for the member farms. But additionally, they can be assigned non-systemic conformities in the following way. Only for the criteria addressed to the subject group administrator, which are identified in the group scoring tool with light blue background, the compliance of the sampled member farms has an impact on the scoring of the group administrator, as he is responsible for its implementation. So in the event that the sample of member farms has a recurring nonconformance in one of these criteria, the tool will automatically assign in the Group Administrator tab a nonconformance for the group administrator categorized as systemic nonconformance. This nonconformance will be reflected in the group administrator scoring regardless of the compliance of the group administrator with respect to that criterion. In this example, criterion 2.6 and 2.7 have a recurring nonconformity. In criterion 2.6, which is directed to group administrator, then we will see that the group administrator will be assigned a systemic nonconformity and will impact compliance for critical criteria level C, B, or A that is directed to the group administrator. Once both the group administrator and the farms part of the sample have been assessed and compliance has been completed, the checklist will calculate the compliance percentage according to the following formulas. In the case of the group administrator scoring, this will incorporate the presence or absence of systemic nonconformities. In this section, the performance evaluation system for multi-sites will be explained and the instructions for the correct use of the checklist tool will be shown. In the same way as for groups, the multi-site model is evaluated both the facilities of the group administrator as well as each of the multi-site farms selected in the sample. Specifically, the scope for the group administrator includes the infrastructure, personnel, and other areas of human activity directly related to the management of the certificate. And in the case that it possesses, the group administrator will be evaluated criteria related to natural ecosystems, processing areas, handling of agrochemicals, or any other element that is limited to the impact areas. To complete the checklist tool of member farms, each of the audited member farms will be evaluated all the criteria within their scope, and a not applicable compliance or non-compliance will be assigned correspondingly. In the example shown, the evaluation of the multi-site farm 3 is missing, so completion is required as appropriate. And the information of findings and evidence for all critical criteria and nonconformance of continuous improvement criteria will be completed, with a summary that reflects the reality of the multi-site farms. To complete the group administrator checklist, all applicable criteria will be evaluated only within the scope of the group administrator, and a not applicable compliance or non-compliance will be assigned. Additionally, it is necessary to include the findings and evidence for all critical criteria and non-compliance in C-level criteria. In this tab, you should not include compliance information for multi-site farms, only from the group administrator. Once the evaluation of the multi-site farms and the group administrator has been completed and the tool has been filled in, the tool will do the following calculations. For the group administrator and each of the multi-site farms, calculate the percentage of compliance with the critical criteria in each of the levels according to the following formula. A group administrator with 2 multi-site farms in the sample in year 0, calculations will be done as shown in the table. For more information about the evaluation system, please consult the section Implementation of Criteria and Performance Scoring for Farms, Group Administrators, and Smallholders of the RA 2017 Standard and the Evaluation System Guide. Thank you.